All right, everybody, welcome back. We are bringing you local 1K from Game Castle Austin. This is our local game store. I'm Liam from the Illumiteers, and I'm back with Aaron.
Hey, I'm Erin from the Illumiteers.
And we're having a great time here in Austin, Texas, watching some Lorcana play at our local game store. So thanks for joining us today. We are back in round three now of five Swiss rounds, and we have a really fun matchup for you here. We've seen some real strong meta decks the last few rounds, and here we have a couple decks which I wouldn't necessarily call them off meta, but they're not decks that we've seen at the top of tournament play
I have to say,
recently.
I'm so excited to see this Ruby Amber deck here on the right. I don't think I've seen it in quite a while, so I'm really excited to watch.
Yeah, this is a fun deck. So on the right-hand side, we'll talk about this one first. This is a Ruby Amber deck. It's a variation of a Red Fossa build that we've seen in previous sets. I think this particular version though has lost the Mufasa and is doing some
Mhm.
other things in the mid to end game, and we're gonna have to learn about what it's doing together because it's not a deck that I've seen terribly much in competition. I do know it works in the Mulan Floodborn is one of the cards that we see in these decks, and we see there another fun card from Ursula's Return. It's Mulan, who comes into play with two damage counters that sets up another healing target for Rapunzel on turn four. So perhaps a play that we're setting up here. But here we have Mother Gothel coming in, another card that shows up damaged to the game board with three damage counters. And we'll see those go on there as this deck gets off to kind of a fast start.
So, Liam, you've had an opportunity to commentate on a lot of big tournaments. How for you, like, is it cool to see a tournament happening in our local community with players that we all know or that we all know that you and I know really well? How's that kind of different from your most recent experience?
Yeah, this is it's a lot of fun. One of the things that these local tournaments do is they give perhaps newer players a chance to break into the competitive scene who maybe can't travel out to big Lorcana challenges or other major tournaments. And so you will see some players here that are kind of testing their mettle for the first time in the competitive space. On the other hand, you also have some really experienced players. In fact, there's a player here who's finished in the top 16 of a Lorcana challenge playing today, who might be testing out decks that they want to play in these big challenges, but perhaps they have kind of a new build or something that they're experimenting with. And so we get to see some kind of like fun off meta decks. You also have just some decks that are just crazy off meta. Like this Ruby Amethyst or Amber deck, which I I, I do think it's kind of a B or C tier meta deck, but piloted by the right person, it can do really well.
Mhm.
And so it's fun to see what Leonard's going to do with it here. Getting a lure there and passing the turn.
Yeah, it looks like Leonard is already off to kind of a fast with two lore thus far. Had two Mother Gothels come down already. Um, I'm really excited to kind of see how he's setting up for some of these healings. I'm assuming or these abilities that we're going to kind of see later in the game.
Right. Yeah. I think turn four coming up next, turn four when Rapunzel's available to heal his characters and draw some cards. That kind of sets this deck up for the rest of the game. So here we have Brawl coming down, another new card. So one of the things we saw in previous rounds that makes any Ruby matchup tough for these Ruby Sapphire players is Hiram Flabbersham is a card that you really want to stick around for more than one turn. You like to get the two cards off of it when it comes into play, but you're really hoping that it sticks around to quest next turn, perhaps get you four cards at the very least before it's banished. And you really need it to set up your card draw, especially in this meta with these Sapphire Steel decks because Sapphire Steel, and we don't know this for Eric's deck, but Sapphire Steel is a color combo that's moved away from a whole new world in this meta.
Hmm.
Some decks still run it, some decks don't. But if you're not running it, Harem Flavisham becomes even more crucial for you as it is in the Ruby Sapphire build in order to draw you into those late game pieces that you need to close out the game. And so one of the reasons that makes Ruby such a challenge for some of these decks that are run Flaversham is there's a lot of cards now in Ruby which can get rid of Flaversham in the early game. Brawl, which we saw Leonard play there, is one of them. So Leonard using Brawl to remove Flaversham before it can do much damage after coming into play. Another one is Be King Undisputed. Oftentimes Flaversham is the only card on your side of the board in these control decks. And so making Undisputed forces you to pick and banish one of your own characters. And when it's the only target, well, it's the only choice. And so yeah, a bit of a challenge there. So Avalanche coming down there. That's another new card from Ursula's Return. Avalanche is a fun wide damage card that deals 1 damage to each opposing character. Also used to banish locations, and I do think oftentimes it's run in these steel decks for its location removal. But a little extra utility here, that 1 damage option, gives it a little extra utility, and here, kind of the perfect answer for Leonard's board. Leonard setting up for some sort of card draw there with Rapunzel perhaps, and that Avalanche clearing everything out, so, kind of the perfect card to draw into there.
So, Liam, you said that we're kind of seeing these Sapphire Steel decks move away from the whole new world wheel ability. What are they moving towards? Why are we seeing that card kind of weeded out of the meta?
Well, there's just some more cards that were introduced into this deck, which allow you to draw cards. Fortisphere is one of them. Fortisphere is kind of a steel version of Popsicle in that it's a 1 cost item, and when it comes into play, you can draw a card. And so, what that does for this deck is it allows it to find its key uh, combo pieces and its control pieces earlier. And it gives you some more food for Flavisham, etc. So it sets you up for some extra card draw to the point where a whole new world is probably not necessary.
Hmm.
Whole new world is always a gamble because it does allow you to refill your hand, but it also, against certain decks, gives them more fuel.
Hmm.
Sometimes you're happy to empty your opponent's hand in the early game and force them off whatever their initial mulligan draw was, but then sometimes in the late game, a whole new world is a card that you draw and just sit on because you know it'll give your
It's going to
opponent the
play
answers that
into
they
your
need.
opponent's hand. Yeah.
Exactly. Little spice over there on Leonard's side of the board.
Something shiny.
Yeah, this is an enchanted Snow White. We don't see enchanted cards played very often. We don't see Snow White played very often. To see an enchanted Snow White like that is a lot of fun. Gosh, uh, Snow White is a fun card. It's a 6 cost, 3/5. You see it there on the right, shift 4. Whenever it quests, you can return a character card from your discard pile to your hand. And so a little bit of discard recursion there.
And
And
we're
then here
seeing
we
Mother
see,
Golf. Yeah.
yeah, here we see it used, bring it back Mother Gothel. And there's the Rapunzel, which we knew was lurking, able to immediately heal Mother Gothel and giving 3 cards to Leonard there, kind of recharging his hand. These decks like Red Fossa and previous metas and this deck here, there's not a ton of card draw in both
Mhm.
Ruby and Amber. There's a little bit, but most of it's conditional cards that require you, like Rapunzel, to heal your characters in order to then draw cards. We see Julieta do this in the Madrigals and in the Madrigal starter deck.
Mhm.
And so getting Rapunzel, being able to use her healing ability to draw 2 or 3 cards sometime in the early to mid game, you really need to do that you don't need to, but it really helps you out, to recharge your hand and to keep you going. So, it's a combo that you're trying to set up for oftentimes with this color combo, and if you don't hit it, you can kind of stall out in the later game. So Leonard's super happy to get that to go off here.
I have to say, I do really love this Ruby Amber deck with its kind of you're playing into damage and healing. I think as a new player, damage can be a really scary thing to take. And so I love that this deck is like leaning into something that is actually kind of scary, a little bit scary for new players. It seems like a lot of fun to play and challenge yourself uh, to to have this damage applied and try to keep your card on the table long enough to get your Rapunzel out and heal them.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it also forces your opponent into these weird positions. We did see Eric play a Tinkerbell, for example, and deal 1 damage across the board. Well, leaving damage on characters like that is always risky when you know Rapunzels are out there lurking. That can give your opponent's card off that damage. So it kind of changes. If you're playing against a deck with Rapunzel,
Mhm.
it kind of changes how you play because it changes your decision making when it comes to leaving damaged characters out there.
Yeah.
So we did see Maui come on the board and clear out Aerial Item Collector, clean up Eric's side of the board there. Eric now sitting with 9 lore. Not an uncomfortable position to be in at this point in the game, but in terms of lore, the board state though is starting to look a little more scary.
Mhm.
These Ruby Amber decks. oftentimes can close out games very quickly because they have some of these builds tend to have a lot of two lore characters, and we see two of them on the board here with Snow White and Rapunzel. These are cards that give you some sort of a benefit, but they also have a significant number of lore. So before you know it, as your opponent's doing things, um, your opponent's sitting with 4, 5, 6, 7 lore on the board and able to close out fast. Here we have Tinkerbell being used. Oh, goodness gracious. So, Tinkerbell being used to banish a character, deal 2 damage to Snow White, and then combined with a Grab Your Swords that deals 2 damage across the board,
Almost
able
acted
to.
as like a board wipe
It is,
there.
yeah, wipe Leonard's board. So, Eric using Tinkerbell, Grab Your Swords to apply damage there and clear off all of that scary lore game that he was looking at. So, now things feel a little bit more favorable. Grab Your Swords is another interesting card. We did see it, I think, disappear quite a bit,
Mhm.
or from many decks in the meta last set. It was a 5 cost. It's uninkable, and oftentimes it sits in your hand like a rock. But finding a lot of favor nowadays, I think, mostly in response to Bucky decks, to
Mm.
those green steel decks, those characters with ward that can just sit there all game. Grab Your Swords is really the one of the only ways to remove it. So, we see it, appear in a lot more steel decks nowadays and seeing it be used to great effect here. But another Snow White in play, is that
It has to be. I
it
didn't see it
is
come out of
the discard
the
pile. No,
discard
it's
pile, but
it's sitting down there. So it's second, enchanted Snow White there.
okay.
And, we also saw an enchanted Maui, so a lot of bling,
Mhm.
Leonard's bringing to the table here. Fishbone Quill here going into the Inkwell. We'll see what the response is to the Snow White. I mean, Snow White on her own, you know, not terribly scary in terms of lore, but if left unchecked, should be able to pull a character back from the discard pile. And probably, I know we have a Rapunzel down there, so that might be the card we see coming back, able to set up some more card draw. Who knows? But that's really the danger of Snow White here is able to Leonard with access to a lot of different options down there,
Mhm.
able to use his discard pile
It's
as
almost
part
a
of his
second
hand.
deck, yeah.
Mhm. So it sounds like we have a judge call over there. I'm not sure what exactly it is, but that's one of the reasons we're held up. It looks like Eric has a question for the judge, and looks like it was resolved. So quick judge call. It's now resolved. And look at this. This card. I, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if I've ever seen this card played outside of kitchen table. This is the Sapphire Robin Hood, which from the first chapter, it was one of the D23 feature cards. This is Robin Hood, Unrivaled Archer. It has an ability feed the poor. If an opponent has more cards in your hand than you, draw a card when it's played. But during your turn, it also gains evasive. Really fun card to see played because not only does it replace itself in your hand in the right scenario, but it does have 2 lore. I'm willing to bet though that it's also an evasive. It's played partially because it's an answer to Diablo and other evasive characters, which we've seen pop up in the meta here recently. So Unrivaled Archer with evasive on your turn, able to clean up those cards. Probably one of the reasons it's finding favor in this deck here. But love to see it on the table. It's beautiful.
So I don't know, did our team send you the note about the judge call or not?
No.
Okay, so basically what had happened was both players had 3 cards in their hands, one of which was the Robin Hood, and the judge call or the question for the judge was when I play the Robin Hood, is the hand count happening before the play or after the play? So does my opponent have more cards than me before or after? And so does that cue the ability? That's kind of what was going on.
And I believe the answer Robin Hood sees your hand once he's played, and so you would have 2 cards in your hand at that point, and you
Yep.
would get the card draw.
Yeah.
That's the result?
Yes, that was the result.
Yeah. So, so interesting question. But yeah, Robin Hood will take a look at your hand once he hits the board, and get you that card draw. So, good question though. And more flashiness on the board there. There you have Stitch Surfer, the enchanted version from the first chapter. Stitch Surfer draws you 2 cards if you have 2 or more other characters in play. So I didn't see the sequence of plays there. Honestly, I was looking at the judge call remarks, so possibly able to draw Leonard a couple cards there. But another, we talked about the limited card draw in the conditional card draw in Amber and Ruby. This is another one where 2 cards feels really nice off playing this card, but you have
Mhm.
to set it up properly. So both players here, I would argue that both players are not necessarily off their game plans. Leonard, I think, would like to have a little more lore, but able to rebuild his board here, rebuild some cards in hand, and then, of course, everything's sitting down in his discard pile. available for recursion in certain scenarios. Eric here questing the Tinkerbell going to 15 lore. Eric's really in the driver's seat here
Mhm.
in terms of lore total, forcing Leonard to respond to him every turn to keep him from pushing him now 5 lore away from victory. But Hercules coming down and play here, exerted in bodyguard position. Um, I forget the sub name of this one. What kind of chat's going to help me out here? Beloved hero. A powerful card in this scenario here, looking to protect, Tinkerbell, a little bit better in terms of utility, able to deal some damage to Leonard's side of the board. So a card that Leonard, I'm sure, would love to remove, but now being protected by Hercules, not only is Hercules able to clean up anything that hits it at this point, but resist one makes it just extra challenging to remove. Mana Medusa heading into it here, dealing 3 damage, that resist one, taking one off, and Hercules now sitting with 3 damage counters. Snow White coming down, healing Stitch, and perhaps we'll see Stitch with his 4/7 stat line, I believe, run into Hercules to clean that up. So we have Prince Eric come down here. Prince Eric is a card. When it's banished from play, you can choose and banish one of your opponent's characters or a chosen character. This is a great removal card for Leonard. Not only is it let's see, what do we have here? Okay, and then Be King Undisputed. We had a lot go on there. So Be King Undisputed, forcing Eric to pick and banish one of his own characters. And then I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to rewind this in my head and figure out how Leonard removed uh, Eric. But Eric being banished forces Eric, or enables Leonard to choose a character to banish as well. So, oh, Teeth and Ambitions. There was a Teeth and Ambitions there. Okay, so catching up here. Leonard played Eric, played Teeth and Ambitions, targeting his own character, removing Eric from play. When Eric's removed, he can banish one of his opponent's characters, one of Eric's characters, and then coupled with a B King Undisputed, clears up both of those, that Hercules and that Tinkerbell there. So, whew. One of the things when you're casting is
Mhm.
there's so many things to look at. We're trying to look at opponent's hand or the player's hands. We're trying to count their ink. Sometimes we're looking at the discard pile, and gosh, times when plays happen fast like that, it's fun to keep up.
Yeah.
I know you all in Twitch chat here are keeping us honest, but it's sometimes it's the action happens fast or the action happens slow. When it happens fast, you really need to be on your toes. All right. So Eric thinking about things again. Leonard able to swing the board state in his favor, showing 4 lore on the board there. Um, Eric though sitting at 15 lore. These decks with Lucky Dime can close out games very fast,
Mhm.
very fast. And so having that Tamatoa on the board is threatening game, I believe. A Lucky Dime coming down with another 2 would allow Eric to gain 3 off the Lucky Dime and 3 off the Tamatoa, closing out the game. So Eric kind of, if he's able to keep it on the board and he's not, um, sitting able to close that out quickly. That I'm not gonna lie, I can't tell what enchanted that is. I'm not familiar with that one. I would say Twitch chat help me out, but I'm not watching the chat right now, so I'm gonna have to wait for our team to bring that card up. Ah, Minnie Mouse Musketeer Champion. Okay. So Minnie Mouse Musketeer Champion makes sense. That's what was used to banish the Tamatoa. Again, the enchanted versions here, not cards we're used to seeing on the table, but Leonard bringing the spice. So counting lore here, Minnie Mouse Champion has 2 with Rapunzel at 2, Snow White with 1, Surfer at 2, and then Magical there with 1. So I think that's game on the board, unless Eric can remove something. Eric playing Aerial Item Collector. Aerial gains an additional 3 lore, or additional 2 lore rather, if you have more items in play than your opponent. And so here with the Popsicle in play, we'll have 5 lore being the win condition for Eric. But it looks like we are scooping. Um,
Looks like Eric took it.
I am
Mhm.
not sure. I did see a grab your sword there. If grab your sword was played, it would have. I think it would have cleaned up the Snow White, and so that would have prevented the win there. Um, but I'm guessing Leonard won that. I'm gonna have to get from our team what happened there because that was a quick scoop. I venture to guess though, Leonard showing game on board. If Eric didn't have any answers, then that would have been game for Leonard.
Leonard.
So yeah, so it looks like that was game. Eric with 8 lore on the board and no removal options there for Eric. So great game one. These are two really fun decks to watch against each other. Um, One of the interesting challenges again for Eric here is all of Steel's removal is damage based. Whereas Ruby is banishing characters directly or using cards like Madame Medusa to remove them or be prepared or clear them out, damage irrelevant, damage agnostic. All of Steel's removal is damage based, whether it's Tinkerbell or Grab Your Sword, etc. So um, Leonard is a deck that thrives off having damage on his
Mhm.
characters, as we've highlighted. We do see he's running the Juliettas, which draw you a card off healing characters. He's
Mhm.
also running Rapunzels, which draw you a card off healing characters. So it really makes Eric have to think about how to apply his removal here because using mass damage cards like Tinkerbell or Grab Your Sword becomes a lot less appealing when you're offering your opponent a free, 2 or 3 cards.
Yeah. No, I think that Leonard's build is actually really creative, and I'm kind of excited to see how it performs the rest of the day. I mean, he has been doing quite well. He's 2-0-0 throughout the day, but there's definitely there's something here. It's um, really unique.
Yeah, so I will say I know Leonard. Leonard is a player who's been running Red Fossa for months, a couple sets now. Oh my goodness, is that a handful of enchanteds? Pretty close. Wow, and sending back 5. It's a lot of enchanted cards. Sending back 5 to the bottom of the deck, drawing another enchanted there, um, and yeah, shuffling that up. So yeah, Leonard's deck, who's been playing Ruby, Amber, Red Fossa build actually in previous sets. He's very experienced with these ink colors.
Mhm.
There is no Mufasa in this build today.
Mhm.
That's been subbed out in favor of other cards, but it's a card that Leonard knows really well, and it really highlights how if you were a Lorcana player, there is something to be said for adjusting to the meta in terms of shifting entire decks as you're going into different competitive events. On the other hand, most players who've been playing TCGs for a while will tell you it is much better to play a deck that you are intimately familiar with and you know
Mhm.
very, very well than it is to try to shift last minute into a deck that you don't know well, even though it might be the best deck in the meta. And
Right.
and Leonard kind of showing that here by adapting one of his previous builds to the current meta and carrying it into this tournament. And we'll see how he closes out today, but he sure is on a tear so far.
Based on what you've seen so far, Liam, of Leonard's deck, what do you think would be, and we can actually ask Leonard this at the end, but what do you think would be his like biggest challenge? What decks do you think he he would find difficult to play against?
I mean, anything with so his deck really relies on having characters on the board. So playing into other Ruby decks that have conditionless base removal, like Be King Undisputed, Madame
Mhm.
Medusa, Be Prepared, like that, are going to be difficult because Leonard really has to maintain characters on the board either to enable healing or to activate his Stitch, etc.
Mhm.
So anything Ruby is probably his biggest challenge. Bucky decks are probably also not terribly fun, but I think that yeah, that is his biggest challenges is those. But on the other side of the board, we also see some creativity. Here's an Aurora that we don't see terribly often played. First turn Fortisphere, followed by second turn Aurora. Here it looks like singing one jump ahead on turn 3 to get another ink in the inkwell. Another fun little off meta e card with just fantastic
I
art.
was
Like,
about to
oh, man,
say,
yeah,
I was gonna comment on the art. I love that you actually have a scene surrounding her. Very often, I feel like it's card art is so focused on the main character, but Coney really built this lovely, beautiful world around her.
yeah, fantastic. So here we have coming down. This is a card. Yeah, beast. There's another card that enters damage with damage in it. Sorry, but this is a card. I don't see this build played. This build played too often, so I'm catching up here with a couple of these cards. This is Beast Wounded, 2/6 that comes into play with 4 damage. Again, playing into this damage your own characters kind of build. And this does 2 things for this deck. I mean, one, we're familiar with the fact that Leonard is trying to draw cards off of these characters. That's probably the biggest benefit to having these wounded characters in play that you can then immediately, target with your Rapunzels or choose with your Rapunzels. Um, but these cards are also very well statted for the cost, and that's why they have the drawback of being damaged when they come into play. So a 2/6 with 2 lore for 3. If you manage to heal that, you now have a very well-statted character on the board in the early game, that allow you to do work, in this instance, questing while being difficult to remove, in the mid to late game. Eric playing Flaversham. It's a card that he really needs to play in the mid game to get his card draw engine going, especially if he's not playing a whole new world. So a couple options here for questing available. This deck, any of these lucky dime decks really want to build into the end game and kind of start to build their ink advantage. So, but need that Flaversham for mid game card draw. So playing that here, this turn, able to get some cards off of it. We'll see if it sticks until next turn. Is good. And here we have the Julieta coming down, healing 2 damage, giving a card to Leonard. And here we see that beast getting stronger and stronger as those damage counters are removed. All right, so the Flaversham does stick around to the next turn. Eric will be happy to get another 2 cards off of it before it's removed. I've mentioned before, I do think that any of these Flaversham decks, sometimes they struggle in matchups against Ruby because Ruby has so many removal options to get that off the board once it's played. Leonard, though, choosing to use the card draw and probably didn't have the removal for that Flaversham, so I'm willing to bet he doesn't want that to stick around longer than necessary. Before we see the card draw, we have a develop your brain, allowing Eric to look at the top 2 cards of his deck, pick one to keep and send the other to the bottom of his library. Choosing to do that before questing with Flaversham. That's sequencing actions in this game is so important. And Leonard or Eric here choosing to do the develop your brain first to see what he's going to have available in his hand for the next few turns before questing and drawing 2 cards. See one to the bottom. Didn't get to see what he kept. Yeah, it's tough to tell. Tough to tell. We have Annoy going into the Inkwell. One of the interesting rule changes, and here we have. Okay, wow. I apologize. This whole time I've thought that Fortisphere was in play and didn't realize that was the discard pile. It's interesting. Okay, so I've been talking on and on about how important it is to have Flaversham stick around when there were no targets available for it. Now there is. Now the Fishbone Quill is out. But wow, that's fun. Okay, so that was the Fortisphere was not in play and not available to target there. So I think we're doing some lore calculations here. And Flaversham not questing anyway there. Flaversham forecast singing. Along came Zeus. No. Yeah. All right. Back and forth. All right. Maui coming down, clearing up the Flaversham, getting it off the board. We do have a target for it now with Fishbone Quill. So clearing off that Hiram is nice. Prevent that card draw. Both players here again. I don't know. I would say they're kind of where they want to be. I do think Leonard kind of has the edge. He's able to draw a few cards here, is building up, the better board state, and removing that Hiram, removes that card draw for Eric. So I think Leonard's in the driver's seat, and we'll see if Eric's able to draw into the answers that he needs. So here we have a Let It Go, targeting the Maui, sending it to Leonard's Inkwell. And a Tinkerbell into the Inkwell, and that leaves 1 card in hand, I think, maybe 2, but it looks like 1. And again, without that Flaversham and that item-based card draw, it's going to be a challenge for Eric to close things out. So I'm hoping to draw into 1, I think, but back over to Leonard with all the ink available here playing. And look at this family. That's an enchanted card I do know. And look at this family is a 7-cost song. You can sing together, but in this case, we're playing it for the full cost. Allows you to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, pick 2 characters, and put them in your hand. And I mean, in this deck, this is a character-based deck. There's probably, 45, 48 characters in it.
But he just hard played that.
Yep.
With his ink.
Yep.
Wow.
Paid 7, able to draw 2 characters off that. Yeah, this is a character-based deck. This deck evolved from a Mufasa build, as we mentioned before, and so that build wanted to be full of characters because it wanted to activate every time a Mufasa was sent to the graveyard. So this deck just loaded with
Mhm.
characters. It's probably 90% characters and plenty of options for Leonard to look at there to choose what to put in his hand off that card.
I have to say, I love this Sing Together new mechanic. I think it's so unique, and especially for some of the songs we've seen it apply to thus far, it's really flavorful. Um, I think it's neat, and you're able to have some more like kind of beefy songs come into the meta that way.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Fantastic mechanic. Allows some more variety in your builds and how you play the game. We do have another Snow White come down. Snow White, that card that allows you to return a card from your discard pile to your hand. And again, plenty of options down there for Leonard to pick from, or a few options anyway. Not quite as loaded up as we were last game, but nevertheless, a card that'll allow Leonard to recharge his hand with cards from his discard pile. So really sitting in the driver's seat here, and I say that in terms of just cards available to play. Leonard, even though he's playing against a ramp deck, a Sapphire deck, which can put cards in the ink while is sitting with a comfortable amount of ink compared to his opponent. And then Eric, 3 cards in hand now, but really needs to get his draw engine going to build up that end game board state that he likes. Leonard, more ink there with Snow White heading there based on due to a Let It Go being hard played by Eric. And then it looks like Aurora questing, and you see Fishbone Quill used to send another card into the inkwell. So couple ink this turn, and yeah, back over to Leonard. Um, Leonard doing some math there, it looks like. And we're going to shift into Queen Regal Monarch and quest immediately for 2 lore, and then quest again for 3 lore total. Queen Regal Monarch having an ability that will allow Leonard to manipulate the strength of various characters. And actually, I take it back. The Julieta Madrigal not questing there. We're doing it looks like adjusting characters' strength. So it's interesting here. Queen Regal Monarch should have manipulated the strength enough that I don't think there was any damage applied to the Julieta there. I could be wrong. But
I think it was 1 damage.
no, but Queen Regal Monarch allows you to add strength to your character and reduce your opponent's character strength. And Aurora. Okay, so here's the rub. So all right, I'm catching myself here. Chat's going crazy. So you cannot choose because Aurora has ward. You cannot choose her to target with the Queen's ability, meaning that that doesn't take effect. So Julia able to clean up Aurora there, but taking 1 damage in the process because it's not a legal target for the Queen's ability. Forgot about the ward.
Mm.
All right,
I
Julieta
was like,
question.
no, there is 1 damage that just got applied.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Eric playing Tamatoa. That's one of the cards that he really wants to see late game.
Mhm.
Tamatoa, when it enters play in Quest, allows you to pull items back from your discard pile, enabling you to get Fortispheres and Popsicles rolling again. And it also serves as one of your finishers because it's going to gain additional lore for every item that you have in play. Couple that with a Lucky Diamond, you can close games out pretty quickly. But here, a great card to allow Eric to start pulling items back and rebuilding his hand a little bit. The problem again, though, is anytime you leave 1 character on the board, you're subject to things like Lady Tremaine, which I'm not sure Leonard's running, but Be King Undisputed is another card forcing Eric to pick one of his characters, and there's only 1 option there. But Prince Eric is also, unconditional removal for, Leonard if he can banish it. And so a card that Leonard's happy to play here is an answer to the Tamatoa. If Leonard has a Teeth and Ambitions or a card that'll allow him to remove it immediately, he can take care of that Tamatoa. Otherwise, he's going to have to wait for Eric to quest with it. And there we go, to allow Eric to challenge into it and remove it. Unless he's... Okay, so here we are singing Let It Go with the Tamatoa, it looks like. We played it. And we have another Tamatoa come to play. Okay, so it looks like we sang Let It
Tamatoa.
Go with the Tamatoa, targeting the shifted queen, getting rid of that. Now that the challenge or the problem there is being a shifted card. Both of those cards will go into Leonard's Inkwell, so that's 2 additional ink he gets off that shifted card. And Eric playing another Tamatoa as an insurance policy if that Eric is able to remove that one Tamatoa, which it most certainly will. And here we have a Maui, which will rush and challenge into that Tamatoa. And here, that's the worst possible card because Eric will go and finish off that one Tamatoa. And then when it's removed, it will banish the second Tamatoa. So 2 Tamatoas for 1 Eric there feels like a pretty good
Feels,
trade.
yeah.
Maui doing the crucial work there to soften that shell of the crab before Eric goes in and finishes him up.
Very nicely. Soft shell crab, got it.
And then we have a little bit of a board rebuild here with Snow White coming down and another queen coming down. But again, I'm guessing these are just lore gainers for Leonard and possible shift targets. But Eric responding with a great card in this scenario. That's Aerial Sonic Warrior. This is a card that allows Ariel to do damage whenever songs are sung. And with some 3 damage specifically. So with the Queen and Snow White sitting there as targets, this is a card that should allow Eric to clean up a few things. Yeah, Aerial Sonic Words, fantastic art as well. I did say whenever, so looking at the card again, I did say whenever a song is sung, it is whenever a card is played. So here Ariel's challenging in to clean up the Queen. And Eric just has both players finding the removal answers they need just back and forth to clean up board states here. And then we have here's Rapunzel. I mean, oh gosh. I feel like Eric was getting to a place kind of stabilizing things a little bit. Leonard was running through his hand, running through a lot of the cards, running through a lot of cards, and then able to draw 3 there is just really, really crushing when you see your opponent draw 3 cards in the end game like this. So drawing into, I think, a Mana Medusa, which enables him to target or choose Aerial Sonic Warrior to clean up when she enters play. And so taking care of Eric's board there. Eric responds with another Aerial, different Aerial. This is Aerial Item Collector, a card which gains an additional 2 lore, bringing her up to 5 when you have more items than your opponent. And when you're playing this game, a lot of times 1 item is more items than your opponent. And in this matchup, that's certainly the case. So Ariel will have 5 lore for the duration of her time on the board, as long as she sticks around. Leonard here, not super worried about Ariel, though, particularly the lore aspect driver, choosing to quest to 16, getting within striking distance of the game ending here. So Eric, rather than questing with Ariel and improving his lore, having to think about taking care of Leonard's side of the board. And it looks like Eric didn't have the answers, ran out of cards, and Leonard just had it on board. So, gosh, again, I think that card draw.
He had an amazing engine going on his side of the board, Leonard. I mean, the amount of ink at his disposal near the end of the game, really anything that was coming into his hand, he was going to be able to play and potentially multiple characters simultaneously, partner with his card draw. He had just really, I think that deck was just really clicking
Yeah.
near the end game there.
Yeah, this I'm kind of excited about this build. I'll be interested to see if we see versions of this appear in the top cuts of some bigger events. This is an evolution of Red Fossa without the Mufasa, so we have to call it something else
Red.
now. Red
Red.
something. Yeah. But it plays similarly to, in other TCGs in Magic, there's versions of decks called Aristocrat decks, which you benefit from doing, sacrificing or banishing your own things. And this is a deck that kind of plays similarly, where you want to have damage on your characters, and there are times where you, in the case of Eric, want to remove your own characters in order to gain a positive effect out of them. So it's a really fascinating build. I do think it got some additional juice, or that style of play got an additional a bit of juice this set with cards like Beast Wounded and the Mulan Wounded Soldier, which come into play like Mother Gothel with damage on them already, makes it a lot easier to set up your conditional card draw. And I do think if anything, that's the one downside of this deck is that you need to draw into, or you obviously need card draw. More cards is better. And so to win any, I think, high-level competitive game, you have to set up probably 1 or 2 of those 2 or 3 card Rapunzel draws. And if you can do that, I think it gives you the juice you need to close these games out with your removal and then some of your high lore characters near the end game. So Yeah. So Leonard showing us how it's done there. Taking his new Amber Ruby deck, Ruby Amber, Amber Ruby, through round three here, 3-0. I think he's well positioned to make the top cut at this point, so we'll probably see him in the top 8 later on. And I really enjoy watching this build. So if you're watching on Twitch there, thanks so much for hanging out with us. I want to know, I'm not watching the chat right now. I'm going to log in once I get off the stream, but I'm interested to know what you think about Leonard's build. If you think it has some viability in some of these bigger Lorcana challenge events. This is a color combo that Leonard's been playing for months and months and months. Thank you all for joining us as we cover the 1K here in Game Kastle Austin. This is our local LGS. We do have some new players here. We have some experienced players here. We have some Top 16 Lorcana Challenge players here. And thanks to the 20 Pro team for bringing us the stream, inviting us to commentate. It's a lot of fun. Any day that I get to sit and watch, high-level Lorcana play, especially when it's high-level Lorcana play in my local scene, is just a treat. So thanks so much to 20 Pro for bringing us the stream. And thank you all for hanging out with us. We'll be back here shortly with very, very, very shortly with a player interview. So don't go anywhere. And then we'll be on to the next round here, round 4, shortly after that. So thanks so much, folks.
Everybody, welcome back. We are here with Leonard, who you just saw 2-0 that last match. Leonard, how are you feeling after that?
Oh, that was intense. My heart was beating, but it was a good match. It was a tough match. I did not know what to expect from my opponent.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting build on a Sapphire Steel deck. Was there anything that was like really surprising to you coming out of that match?
Oh, the Aurora. That caught me off guard. Like, he's protecting his items. He doesn't have to worry about me attacking his items, but I get it. Like, Aladdin will come in and wreck shop if you let him. So I get that Aurora there to just hang out and be like, no, my items are good. I respect it. That was unexpected.
So, speaking of unexpected, your deck is so unique. Can you tell me a little bit about like the history of your deck, how you got to where you are? Liam talked about on the stream you've been playing Red Faucet for a while. Talk to me about the evolution here.
Yeah, so I have been playing Red Faucet. Like, one of the first games that Liam streamed was at IkiCon. And I remember round 3, I got wrecked that game, but he was streaming it and it was Red Faucet, like Red Faucet. So Amber Ruby is a color combo I've been playing for a while. With this most recent set, Mufasa seemed less appealing. Like, I wanted to play with Brawls. I wanted to play with Look at This Family. There were a lot of new interesting cards I wanted to give a try. And with all the additional self-damaging characters and the healers, I was like, is there something I can do with this? And then I realized all of my 1 and 2 drops, Mother Gothel will be healed, and all my other 1 and 2s are like, I'll shift into something big, and it's a threat. So can I make something with this? And the answer seems to be kinda so far.
That's awesome. So, can you talk a little bit? I do love your deck. It is very unique and different. Can you talk us through your mulligan strategy with this deck and what you're kind of looking forward in your first hand?
Absolutely. So in my mulligan strategy, I want 1 and 2 drops, but I want some type of combination of the people that damage themselves and the people that heal. So a Mulan Snow White, Beast Rapunzel, like that is my ideal curve. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I can play them, heal them, play them, heal them, and that'll refill my hand and do all sorts of other stuff. Aside from that, uninkables can go away. And if you're too expensive and you're not if you're too expensive and I can't shift you, you'll probably go away too.
So, you're keeping your Rapunzel in your first hand, or are you sending her back?
No, I'm gonna try to keep my Rapunzel in my first hand, especially if I have someone who hurts himself. And I got, Mulan, Beast, and Mother Gothel to do that.
So we are a couple weeks out from Disney Lorcana Challenge Fort Worth. I hear you're going, and so are you bringing this deck? What are you looking forward to about that event?
That is kind of the deck I'm planning to bring. I'm still tweaking it. I'm trying to make adjustments to it. I made a couple adjustments this past week. I took 4 cards out and put 4 completely different cards in. I think it helped, but I'm keeping an eye out, especially for meta threats. Emerald, Steel, Ruby, and then with either Amethyst or Sapphire, those are going to be big challenges. So I'm keeping an eye out for that and how I can win against them.
We hear sometimes kind of more pro Lorcana players talking about bringing a deck that you love to play rather than bringing whatever the hot new meta deck is. And so, from your perspective, this is a deck you've been playing for a while. You love to play it. Talk me through like what is your strategy as you go into a new meta about how you're taking this deck that you love and how do you start tweaking it so that it can remain competitive?
That's tough. There's a lot of things to take in consideration there. You have to think about what everyone else is playing, but you have to think about what you enjoy and what you like playing. Look at the new cards that came in, see what cards in the backlog are like, are a potential fun pair. That, maybe a card like Snow White that has not been really good up to this point, all of a sudden, consistently fish out from your discard is really useful. It's really nice to, fish out Mother Gothel and play the Rapunzel, or vice versa. Like, a lot of the cards are like short chain 2-card combos. So being able to pick it out and be like, boom, done, is real handy. So yeah.
That's so exciting. Well, you'll definitely see us there. I think Liam's gonna compete and we'll be there with our daughter. So yeah, we'll definitely have to get together up in Fort Worth. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Leonard, for taking the time, and good luck with the rest of your day.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you so much.